Are you ready to discover the shocking truth about your spring gardening routine? Millions of dedicated gardeners will march into their yards this April, work until their backs ache, and unknowingly destroy half of their potential summer harvest. Yes, you heard that right. The very things you think are helping your plants are actually setting them up for massive failure. Welcome to the world of smart gardening, where doing less physical work actually guarantees you more fruit and vegetables. Today, I'm going to reveal the specific things you must absolutely never do in April if you want to see an explosive yield this summer. I promise that by the end of this video, you will save yourself hours of agonizing labor and easily triple your yields without breaking a sweat. Have you ever noticed that the hardest working gardeners sometimes get the absolute worst results? It is a fascinating paradox, but it is entirely true. Let me know in the comments right now if you have ever lost a crop despite doing everything strictly by the book. It is time to challenge everything you thought you knew about spring yard work and embrace the lazy, highly effective way of growing your own food. Before we dive into the specific mistakes, we need to understand exactly what is happening in your garden during the month of April. This is a highly volatile transition period in the natural world. Beneath the surface of the soil, millions of beneficial microbes, fungi, and earthworms are just waking up from their deep winter slumber. In your fruit trees and berry bushes, the sap is beginning to flow upwards, carrying vital energy from the root system to the forming buds. Nature operates on a very strict, temperature-dependent schedule. When we try to rush this ancient biological process, we cause catastrophic damage. Plants distribute their stored energy very carefully. If a gardener interferes at the wrong moment, that precious energy is completely wasted. By understanding the natural rhythm of the earth, we can step back, stop fighting against the weather, and let nature do the heavy lifting for us. Now, let us look at the exact mistakes you need to avoid. Let us start with the very first mistake that ruins so many gardens before the season even truly begins. I am talking about digging or turning your vegetable beds while the spring soil is still wet and heavy. Many folks rush out with their spades on the first sunny day in April, eager to get to work. But if you dig when the earth is saturated with melted snow, you are committing a massive crime against your soil structure. Think of it like kneading wet bread dough. When you turn wet soil, you squeeze all the tiny microscopic air pockets right out of it. Once the sun comes out, that soil dries into hard, impenetrable concrete clods that delicate plant roots simply cannot push through. Your poor carrots and beets will end up severely stunted and deformed. The smart, lazy gardener knows that patience pays off tremendously here. Pick up a handful of dirt and squeeze it tightly. If it forms a muddy ball that does not crumble when you gently poke it, you must step away from the garden bed. By simply waiting another week or two for the wind to dry the top layers, you preserve the delicate capillary action of the earth. When it is finally ready, you will barely need to work it at all. Let us talk about feeding your garden, because this is where so many well-meaning people throw their hard-earned money straight down the drain. The second massive mistake you can make in April is dumping heavy nitrogen fertilizers around your fruit trees and berry bushes too early. You might see the snow melting and think your plants are starving for a big spring breakfast. But here is the biological reality of the situation. Until the soil temperature warms up significantly, the roots of your trees are essentially completely asleep. Pouring fast-acting nitrogen on cold soil is exactly like trying to force-feed a massive feast to a person who is deeply asleep in their bed. They cannot consume it. Because the root hairs are inactive, that expensive fertilizer does not enter the plant. Instead, the heavy spring rains will simply wash all that nitrogen away, carrying it deep into the groundwater where it does absolutely no good. You must wait until the soil actually warms up and the buds clearly begin to swell and show green. That is the exact moment the roots wake up and start aggressively looking for nutrients. By delaying your feeding, you ensure every ounce goes directly into creating fruit. Now we arrive at a critical era that can permanently damage your favorite orchard trees. I am referring to pruning bleeding fruit trees in the middle of April. We are specifically talking about trees like plums, cherries, and peaches. While late winter is fine for pruning apples, touching your stone fruits when the sap is actively rushing up the trunk is incredibly dangerous. Imagine walking around with an open wound that simply will not stop losing blood. That is exactly what happens when you cut a cherry branch in early spring. The tree cannot heal the cut quickly enough, and the sap just keeps pouring out. This sweet, sticky sap acts like a neon sign for every dangerous fungal spore and pest in the neighborhood. They flock to the open wound, and before you know it, your beautiful tree is battling a massive infection. The smart approach is to completely ignore these trees right now. Leave your pruning shears in the shed. You should only prune your stone fruits after they have fully leafed out or immediately after you harvest the fruit later in the summer. Doing less right now actually saves the life of your tree and protects your future harvests. Another classic trap that catches eager gardeners is the complete removal of winter mulch. In an effort to make the garden look tidy and beautiful, many people rake away every last bit of straw, leaves, or wood chips from their garden beds. But April weather is notoriously deceptive. You might have a warm, sunny afternoon, followed by a vicious, freezing wind the very next night. By stripping the soil bare, you are taking away its protective blanket. The exposed earth dries out rapidly in the spring winds, and the beneficial microbes near the surface die from the harsh exposure. Think of it like walking out of a warm house into a freezing storm without wearing a coat. Your soil needs that protective layer to maintain a steady temperature and retain spring moisture. Instead of breaking your back hauling away all that heavy, wet mulch, just do the lazy thing. Simply pull the mulch back a few inches from where you actually intend to plant your seeds. Let the sun warm that small strip of soil, while the rest of the bed remains protected and moist. This saves you an unbelievable amount of unnecessary labor and keeps your soil food web incredibly healthy. Let us move on to a mistake that breaks thousands of hearts every single year. Planting warm weather crops outside way too early. We all want to be the first person in the neighborhood to harvest a ripe red tomato. But moving your precious tomato, pepper, or eggplant seedlings into the garden in April is usually a fatal error. Do not be fooled by 3 days of warm sunshine. You must pay attention to the soil temperature, not just the air temperature. When you put a heat-loving tomato into cold April soil, the roots immediately go into a state of severe shock. It is exactly like jumping into a freezing ice bath. The plant completely stops growing. Its leaves turn a sickly shade of purple, and its immune system crashes. Even if a late frost does not kill it completely, the plant will be permanently stunted. A tomato planted 3 weeks later in properly warmed soil will quickly outgrow and outproduce the one that shivered through April. Keep your tender plants safe inside your warm house or greenhouse. Let your neighbors make the mistake of rushing. You will harvest 10 times more fruit by simply waiting for the earth to thoroughly warm up. Here is a secret that orchard growers know, but backyard gardeners always seem to miss. Ignoring your early spring pest management. April is the absolute perfect time to apply organic dormant oil sprays to your fruit trees and berry bushes, but most people skip it because they do not see any bugs yet. This is a massive mistake. Right now, millions of microscopic aphid eggs and spider mites are resting in the tiny cracks of your tree bark, just waiting for the leaves to emerge. If you do nothing, they will explode in population and destroy your spring growth. Waiting until you actually see the bugs on the leaves is like trying to close the castle gates after the invading army is already inside. The brilliant, low-effort solution is to spray the bare branches with a simple horticultural oil before the buds completely open. The oil gently coats the branches and smothers the overwintering pests before they ever get a chance to hatch. It takes only 10 minutes to spray a tree, but it will save you months of agonizing battles with sticky leaves and ruined fruit later in the summer. Be proactive now, and you can be incredibly lazy later. Let us discuss the bizarre obsession many people have with raking up every single fallen leaf in their backyard orchard. When April arrives, gardeners spend hours performing back-breaking labor trying to make the ground under their fruit trees look like a pristine green carpet. This is not only exhausting, it is biologically destructive. Those decaying leaves are nature's perfect free compost. More importantly, they are the primary winter home for thousands of beneficial predatory insects, including ladybugs and native predatory wasps. When you aggressively rake and bag those leaves, you're literally throwing away the natural army that protects your trees from summer pests. You're throwing away free gold. The smart, self-sufficient method is beautifully simple. Do absolutely nothing. Leave the leaves exactly where they are. As the weather warms, earthworms will drag those leaves down into the dirt, naturally aerating the roots of your trees and providing a slow-release fertilizer. By refusing to rake, you save your back, improve your soil fertility, and maintain a powerful ecosystem that does the pest control work for you. Sowing seeds into freezing cold, wet clay is another guaranteed way to lose your harvest before it starts. There is a common myth that root crops like carrots, beets, and radishes should be planted as soon as the snow melts. While they can handle cool weather, dropping tiny, delicate seeds into icy mud is a recipe for total disaster. The seeds require a certain level of warmth to trigger germination. If the ground is too cold, the seeds just sit there in the dark. Within a few days, fungal pathogens in the wet clay will attack the seed coat and your seeds will simply rot away into nothing. You will wait a month, see absolutely zero green shoots, and have to buy more seed and start all over again. Imagine locking your food inside a cold, dark freezer and expecting it to grow. Do not waste your expensive seeds. Use a cheap soil thermometer. Wait until the soil is consistently above 45 degrees before you even think about sowing carrots. If you are incredibly impatient, the clever trick is to build a raised bed, which warms up weeks faster than the flat ground. Otherwise, practice the art of patient waiting. Strawberry beds require very special attention in April, and making the wrong move here will cost you your entire crop of sweet berries. Many gardeners eagerly remove the thick layer of winter straw covering their strawberry patches the moment the days begin to feel pleasant. They see the tiny green leaves forming and think the plants need maximum sunshine. But spring weather is dangerously unpredictable. April nights frequently drop below freezing without any warning. Those newly forming central crowns of the strawberry plant are incredibly fragile. If frost hits an unprotected crown, the tiny flower buds hidden inside will turn black and die instantly. It is exactly like sending a newborn baby out into a snowstorm without a winter coat. You will get plenty of green leaves later, but absolutely zero fruit. The lazy but brilliant strategy is to gently pull the straw just off the top of the plants, but leave it piled thickly right next to them. If the weather forecast predicts a sudden frost, you can spend 2 minutes gently sweeping the straw back over the plants. Keep that protective blanket handy until all danger of severe cold has completely passed. April is traditionally tree planting season, but the way most people plant bare root fruit trees guarantees a slow, miserable death for the plant. The mistake is digging a massive hole in heavy clay soil and dropping the tree in while the ground is still totally saturated with spring rain. People think trees need infinite amounts of water, but tree roots also desperately need oxygen to survive. When you dig a hole in heavy, wet clay, you are essentially creating a non-draining clay bathtub. The hole fills with underground water, and the poor tree roots sit completely submerged. They literally drown before they can even grow a single leaf. The tree rots from the bottom up. To avoid this tragedy, you must ensure your soil has dried out enough to work properly. If your yard is naturally swampy in April, the absolute smartest thing you can do is plant the tree on a slight mound or berm. Just elevate the root zone a few inches above the surrounding ground level. This tiny adjustment ensures the water drains away freely, the roots can breathe deeply, and the tree establishes itself effortlessly without any extra work from you. Here is a practice that needs to be permanently banned from the lazy gardener's playbook. Deep tilling the entire vegetable garden with a heavy, noisy machine. It feels productive because the dirt looks soft and fluffy when you finish, but deep tilling is an absolute catastrophe for soil health. Beneath the surface, there is an intricate microscopic network of beneficial fungal threads that transport water and nutrients directly to your plants. There are also millions of earthworms creating vital drainage channels. Running a tiller through this ecosystem is like driving a massive bulldozer through a thriving city. You destroy the infrastructure, chop up the worms, and bring millions of hidden weed seeds right to the surface where they will eagerly sprout. The ultimate lazy gardening technique is the no-dig method. Instead of destroying the soil structure, simply lay down a thick layer of rich compost directly on top of the old beds. Let the worms naturally mix it in for you. Your plants will grow twice as fast in undisturbed living soil, and you will never have to wrestle with a heavy machine again. Let us talk about a tiny detail that causes massive problems for young orchard trees. Leaving plastic winter tree wraps or trunk guards on your trees far too late into the spring. We put these guards on in the fall to protect the tender bark from hungry rabbits and freezing winds. But as April brings warmer, sunny days, those plastic tubes turn into dangerous miniature greenhouses. The dark plastic absorbs the sun's heat, cooking the bark underneath. Worse, spring rains get trapped inside the tube, creating a dark, incredibly humid environment right against the trunk. This is the perfect breeding ground for destructive bark rot and fungal diseases. It is like wearing a thick plastic raincoat inside a hot sauna. Your tree is suffocating. As soon as the deep freezes are finished and the snow is gone, you must walk through your orchard and remove those protective wraps. Let the trunk breathe the fresh spring air and dry out in the sunshine. This takes only seconds per tree, but failing to do it can completely girdle and kill a tree you spent years growing. If you are lucky enough to have a greenhouse or cold frame, you're probably growing early greens or starting seedlings right now. But there is a hidden killer lurking in your garden hose. Watering your warm, tender greenhouse plants with freezing cold tap water in April is a brutal shock to their system. The air inside your greenhouse might be a beautiful 70 degrees, but the water coming out of the ground pipe is barely above freezing. When you douse your fragile seedlings with icy water, their roots panic. The severe thermal shock temporarily paralyzes the plant. It stops absorbing nutrients for several days, causing yellowing leaves and deeply stunted growth. It is exactly as if someone threw a massive bucket of ice water over your head while you were sleeping in a warm bed. The brilliantly simple solution is to keep a large plastic barrel or several dark-colored buckets filled with water inside the greenhouse. The ambient heat of the sun will warm the water perfectly during the day. When you water your plants, it will be gentle, warm, and highly soothing to the roots. Weed control in April is a tricky subject, and doing it the hard way will punish you for the rest of the summer. When the first green weeds pop up, many people grab their trowels and start aggressively digging deep into the soil to pull out every single root. This is a monumental mistake. As we discussed earlier, your soil is full of thousands of dormant weed seeds buried deep down. When you aggressively dig out a small weed, you churn the soil and bring 100 new weed seeds up to the surface light, guaranteeing a massive explosion of new weeds next week. You are basically waking up a sleeping dragon. The intelligent, extremely lazy approach is to never disturb the soil deeply. Instead, use a sharp scuffle hoe or a stirrup hoe. Simply glide the sharp blade just 1 fraction of an inch below the surface of the soil. You instantly slice the head off the weed without disturbing the soil bank below. The weed dies, and the hidden seeds stay buried in the dark forever. You can clear an entire bed in 3 minutes without ever bending over. One of the most tragic events in spring gardening happens when people move their beautiful dark green indoor seedlings directly into the harsh outdoor world without any preparation. Skipping the hardening off process is a guaranteed death sentence for your plants. Inside your house, your seedlings have lived a completely sheltered life. They have never felt a real breeze, and they have only experienced filtered light through a window. Taking them straight out to the garden in April is exactly like taking a person who has been locked in a dark room all winter and dropping them directly into a scorching desert without any sunscreen. The intense ultraviolet rays of the actual sun will severely burn their fragile leaves white within hours, and the spring wind will snap their weak stems in half. You must be patient. Introduce them to the outdoors incredibly slowly. Start with just 1 hour of dappled shade in a location completely protected from the wind. Over the course of 10 days, gradually increase their exposure to direct sunlight and breezes. This small daily effort guarantees your plants survive the transition and thrive instantly upon planting. Let us revisit the topic of feeding, specifically regarding young shrubs and newly planted bushes. A devastating April mistake is applying heavy, chemical, salt-based fertilizers directly to the root zones of establishing plants. People buy concentrated blue powders, hoping to force massive growth. But these artificial chemical fertilizers are incredibly harsh. As the tender, microscopic feeder roots just begin to grow and search for water, the heavy concentration of chemical salts literally burns them away. It aggressively pulls water out of the delicate root tissues. It is exactly like trying to survive by drinking highly concentrated energy drinks instead of eating a balanced, healthy meal. Your plants will look scorched. Their leaf edges will turn brown, and they will suffer deeply. The self-sufficient, low-effort gardener completely ignores these harsh chemicals. Instead, simply top-dress the base of the shrub with a few shovels of high-quality, well-rotted compost or aged manure. This gentle organic food slowly releases nutrients safely over months, feeding the soil biology and gently nursing your plants without any risk of chemical burns. Planting potatoes seems incredibly easy, but doing it at the wrong time in April will ruin your entire harvest. Many old traditions say you must plant potatoes on a specific early spring holiday, regardless of the actual weather, but if the soil temperature is completely freezing, dropping chunks of seed potato into cold, wet mud is a terrible idea. Potatoes are essentially massive sponges full of water and starch. If they sit in freezing, waterlogged soil for 3 weeks without growing, they will simply become a mushy, rotten meal for underground grubs and bacteria. You will dig them up later and find absolutely nothing but slime. The brilliant, extremely lazy trick is to ignore the calendar and pre-sprout your potatoes indoors. Simply lay the seed potatoes in a cardboard box in a warm, bright room for a few weeks. They will develop strong, thick green shoots while safely out of the cold rain. Wait until the outdoor soil feels pleasantly warm to your bare hand, usually around 50 degrees. Then plant your pre-sprouted potatoes. They will explode out of the ground instantly, skipping the dangerous rotting phase entirely. Aggressive spring pruning of your flowering and fruiting bushes is another massive trap. Many new gardeners get carried away with their clippers in April and enthusiastically hack away at everything that looks slightly overgrown. But if you deeply prune bushes like blueberries, certain raspberries, or early flowering currants right now, you are literally cutting off this year's entire harvest. These specific plants spent all of last summer carefully forming their fruit buds on the old wood. Those tiny bumps on the branches are the berries you are supposed to be eating in July. When you chop those branches off in April, you throw the harvest straight into the compost bin. It is exactly like taking your hard-earned paycheck and throwing it directly into a fire before cashing it. The lazy rule of thumb is very simple. If a shrub flowers or produces fruit in the early to midsummer, absolutely do not prune it in the spring. Wait until immediately after you have picked the last berry. Let the plant grow wild right now. Step back, put the sharp tools away, and let the branches produce the food they have been preparing for months. As April progresses, your early fruit trees like apricots, peaches, and early cherries will finally burst into spectacular, beautiful blossoms. This is the most exciting time in the orchard, but it is also the most dangerous. The mistake here is assuming that once the flowers open, the danger is completely gone. A sudden, late April overnight frost will freeze the delicate reproductive parts inside the open blossom. You will wake up to find the petals turning brown and falling off. One single frosty night can instantly wipe out 100% of your harvest for the entire year. It is like leaving a collection of fragile glass ornaments outside during a violent hailstorm. You must watch the weather forecast obsessively during the blooming period. If temperatures are predicted to dip near freezing, you must act. The easiest method is to throw large frost blankets or even old bed sheets completely over the small trees in the evening. This traps the latent heat of the earth underneath the canopy. Just remember to take the covers off in the morning so the crucial bees can get in and pollinate. The final and perhaps most important mistake you can make in April is a psychological one. It is the mistake of rushing nature and stressing yourself out. Spring fever makes us want to accomplish a million things in a single weekend. We try to force the garden to conform to our aggressive schedules. We plant too early, we dig too deep, and we overmanage every single detail. But the absolute core philosophy of smart, self-sufficient gardening is observation and patience. Nature has been growing plants successfully for millions of years without our interference. Trying to force a garden to grow fast is exactly like trying to push a river to make the water flow faster. It is exhausting, and it accomplishes absolutely nothing. The truly successful gardeners are the ones who walk their property slowly. They observe the temperature of the soil, they watch the swelling of the buds, and they wait for the perfect, effortless moment to act. By slowing down, resisting the urge to overwork, and working completely in harmony with the weather, you will save your physical energy and unlock the most massive, abundant harvests of your life. There you have it, the ultimate guide to the crucial mistakes you must absolutely avoid this April. The overarching theme here is brilliantly clear. When it comes to spring preparation, doing less physical work at the wrong time is infinitely better than doing the wrong work completely. By simply waiting for the soil to warm, protecting your delicate plants from erratic spring weather, and refusing to destroy the natural biology with heavy tilling and aggressive chemicals, you are setting the stage for an explosive summer harvest. Proper, patient care today will literally save you months of frustrating labor and massive disappointment in the future. Imagine walking into your garden this July and being completely overwhelmed by the sheer volume of perfect, delicious fruit and vegetables, all because you decided to be a little bit lazier and a lot smarter this spring. Thank you so much for watching. If you want to transform your gardening experience and grow massive amounts of food with minimal effort, be sure to subscribe to the channel and hit that like button. We have so many more secrets to share with you. Now, I want to hear from you. Which of these April mistakes have you accidentally made in the past, and how did it affect your harvest? Drop your stories in the comments below, and let us all learn together.